Okay, guys, in the next episode of Denim and Leather Podcast, we have a legendary guitar player and singer for me from my youth, from Trixter. I used to listen to them a lot in the 90s. From Def Leppard, from Ace Frehley band, and a lot of other projects.
How are you? Hi, everybody. Great to be here, and greetings from freezing New Jersey. I woke up today 0 degrees, man, and my house was messed up. So I'm just thawing myself out. I took a hot shower, so I'm ready. I'm ready to talk some rock and roll.
Of course, man. Also, I didn't mention the new project of yours, Always Jovi, but we're gonna talk about it now.
You bet.
Yeah, you're in your studio now, right?
I am, man. This is the world famous Mojo Vegas 6160, where I've been making records and music here for the last 30 plus years, and definitely one of the greatest investments I ever made in my life with my Trixter royalties. So yeah, this is the house that Trixter built.
Wow, man, awesome! And I heard a story about how you told Eddie Van Halen that it's 6160, not 5150, right?
Yeah.
Tell me, why did you name it like that?
Just, because Ed had 5150, Ed and Al, that was their thing. And it was always my dream. Making the first Trixter record, I became obsessed with making records and wanting to be a producer. Before we made the first Trixter record, I wanted to be Eddie Van Halen, Richie Sambora, Randy Rhoads, great guitar player, great songwriter, whatever. But making that record afterwards, I wanted to be Mutt Lange, Bruce Fairbairn, Bob Rock, the great producers. I became obsessed. So it was my dream to be able to build my own studio and be able to kind of mimic what Ed and Alex had at 5150, to where they could make music whenever they wanted to. And so when I built this studio, when I was building it, I'll never forget, I went up to see Ed. He was playing. They were playing, a couple hours away, and we went up to the show. And I remember telling him, man, yeah, I bought a house and building a studio. And he goes, oh, you're building a studio, what, to make demos? I go, no, man, I'm building a real, 24-track digital studio to be able to make records. Trixter, we're going to record all our records there. I got tired of relying on engineers and stuff that never made my music sound the way I wanted to sound. So I wanted to take control and be able to, fiddle the knobs and crank the compressors and make it sound like the way I hear it in my head. And, and I go, yeah, man. And I told him, I said, yeah. So I named my studio 6160 because you got 5150. And he took a drag off his ear and goes, what does 6160 mean? And I go, I have no idea, man, but it sounds fucking cool. So there you go.
Great. And did you go to how did you master the producing stuff? I mean, you are a guitar player, you are a singer, but how did you master the sound engineering thing? Did you went on some courses, or it was all self-taught?
No, and remember, there was no YouTube back then. Now you can learn everything that you ever want to learn on YouTube. For me, it was, luckily I had, I knew about recording, when we were making the first Trixter record. When we got our deal, my managers bought me a little small 4-track recording setup to make all the demos that wound up being the songs for the first album. And so I knew a little bit, but when I built this studio and I bought a, big 24-track Mackie board, and I had these Tascam Digital 88 machines, it was a big learning process. And it was, calling everybody I knew that were engineers to come over and help me. And I had a guy, his name was Gene Porfido, who did some work on the Here record. He was a local awesome sound guy. He used to be Joe Lynn Turner's sound guy back in the 80s for the Joe Lynn Turner solo band. And he was the one who really taught me all about engineering and EQ, how to make things sound proper, and he's a huge teacher in learning that. And then it just was trial and error, man. It's like anything else. You just keep going until you get it right. And believe me, I blew up a bunch of sets of speakers and made all the mistakes that everybody makes. But again, it was, one of the greatest educations. It was me going to, sort of going to college, man. And I will say, 30 plus years later of being an engineer and producer, every day I learned something new. And it's still exciting for me. I was just working, before I did this interview, I was just working on producing Lorraine Lewis, her new album, Femme Fatale, her new record. Yeah. And I'm working on some new songs, a new song that me, Lorraine, and Tommy Hendrickson from Alice Cooper's band wrote.
Yeah, I heard the single. I saw the video. It's amazing. By the way, also Lorraine was my guest last year on the show.
Yeah, love Lorraine.
Yeah, she's amazing. Okay, you can actually sell courses now in mastering, in producing.
Yeah, right.
So tell me a little bit. I will go back in history afterwards, but I wanna ask you about Always Jovi. How did that happen? You're now like official tribute Bon Jovi band, right?
Yeah, of course, man. Bon Jovi has been Kiss, Van Halen, Bon Jovi, Def Leppard, the biggest influences in my career. And John Bon Jovi's been a lifelong, almost 40 years of friendship. He was the first rock star to get behind me and Trixter back in 1986. Before Slippery When Wet took off, we gave him our demo tape and he called us and got behind us. And, he was the one who introduced us to Snake and Rachel and Scotty from Skid Row. And they became like our big brothers. And he told them, make sure you take care of Steve and the Trixter guys. But, it goes back to the, important moments of my life with Bon Jovi. And they're probably the concert when they were on tour opening up for Rat in 1985. It was one of those life-changing moments for me because, it was on the 7800 tour and it was Rat, Invasion Your Privacy at the Meadowlands Arena in New Jersey, still one of the greatest rock shows ever. And I remember that was my first time seeing Bon Jovi. And I remember just being like, oh my God, this is it. It was everything. It had elements of Van Halen. It had elements of Journey. It had elements Bryan Adams and Kiss even. And it was a Def Leppard. It was everything that I loved about what was going on in the 80s rock. And of course, it was the Jersey guys. So it was like your hometown heroes. And I remember watching them. And, first, I had three big impressions that night that changed my life forever. Seeing John, at that point, he was the coolest fucking looking rock star in rock and roll. He had the best hair. He was like the first guy who had the frosted tips. And it was like, man, there was nobody cooler. He was like David Lee Roth meets Steve Perry meets Bryan Adams, all wrapped up in one, the way he sang and the way he performed. And then the band was so incredible because they were having fun. They were smiling so much. It was kind of like the Van Halen thing. It was like they were bringing a party on stage. Yeah. And then thirdly, the most important thing that struck me that night and had a forever impact on me was seeing Richie Sambora live for the first time. And that was the moment watching them, probably by 3 songs in, I was in awe of him as a performer, as a guitar player, but most importantly, as a singer. And that was the night that I saw him and I went, I have to become just like that, a lead singer, guitar player that is going to put those great harmonies and support the lead vocalist like I did with Pete, with Trixter. Yeah. And that was it. And then, here I am, 40 years later with my brand new Always Jovi, Bon Jovi tribute band that I'm so proud of. And I can't wait to get this show out on the road, man, because we are, like I said, it's a tribute like no other. What we're going for with Always Jovi, what I set out to do is, of course, it's a tribute, and to be able to do it pitch perfect, note perfect, make it sound like the way they did in the 80s and 90s at their best, doing the best songs, some deep cuts, some stuff that I don't even think, they've played in 40 or 50, 40 years. So it's going to be really cool. I have a great band, Joey Casada's in it on drums. I have our X factor in the band is our female singer, Devin Marie, who's been with me for a couple years in various things. And she was Debbie Gibson's background singer for the last 15 years. And so she adds a completely different element because we're able to do Who Says You Can't Go Home. And she's able to put these unbelievable harmonies on, which in the promo videos people see. And it's a unique thing. And of course, it's a great visual because she's beautiful. So it's really, really cool in that respect. And then my guitar player, Fred Gorhow, he's with me in the Wizards of Winter, been a dear friend for a long time. He plays the Sambora stuff to the T. And that's the most important thing, that we're doing the music justice. I got Chris McCoy on keyboards, who played with me with Tokyo Motor Fist live a couple times. He played with Trixter as well. And Kevin Humphries, who has been with me for a long time, playing in various different bands. We played in a Van Halen tribute band about 15 years ago together. And, it's just so much fun. And, we're different than all the other tribute bands that I've seen because, first and foremost, we're not doing the look-alike thing. I'm not wearing a blonde wig. In the States, tribute bands have become very, very big, and there's a couple of them. My good buddy Greg Smith, who I was in Tokyo Motor Fist with, he's in a great Journey band called Voyage. And they're like the top Journey band in America with Robbie Hoffman, who's Extreme's manager. These guys are brothers of mine, and they've been helping me. And, when the goal was to be able to make this band be, where people close their eyes and go, is that Bon Jovi from 1989? Because that's what I'm going for. Lyrically, I've spent, and melodically and vocally spent so much time to match John's tone in every inflection, to be able to, and that's the beauty of like YouTube, I'm able to take his soloed vocals and study them and really, and thank God for the fact that my voice, naturally, I sound just like the way he does. And even when I was in Def Leppard, I don't know if a lot of people know, but I got the Def Leppard gig not because of my cool hair or the way I play guitar, but because I can sing. And that was the one thing, to be able to pour some sugar on me, have that voice. Or if I'm doing, you were born to be my baby. Baby, I was made to be your man. To get that, that exact thing. So that's really what I'm going for. And of course, to honor, those guys are my friends, man. And I want to make sure that it's at a top-notch level, and it really is. So I'm just so proud, and I can't wait for, the world to see and hear what I'm doing live.
You're right. I always heard the resemblance in the voice, for example, in Joe Elliott and Bryan Adams. I hear that thing, So Bon Jovi also has that, and you have that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's so it's Bon Jovi guys know about this, right? They're supporting your band, right?
Yeah. I jammed right before it was funny because right before I launched the band, which I think I made the announcement like the first week of December, I was out on tour with my Wizards of Winter band. And we were playing in Nashville, and it just so happened that my buddies, I'm working with this band from Nashville called Hippies and Cowboys, this great like Black Crowes, Bad Company, Leonard Skinner type band. I'm trying to write songs with them and get them a record deal. But long story short, we're mutual friends with David Bryan. So Dave was in town, so he came down to their gig, and I went over afterwards, and it just so happened that we got to go jam together. The footage is out there. It's on my social media, and we played Wanted Dead or Alive, You Give Love a Bad Name, and Bad Medicine. And we had a blast, and I sang the stuff, and Dave was like, wow, man, you sing great or whatever. And then afterwards I put my arm around and I go, dude, I just want you to know, like any day now, I'm announcing I have a new Bon Jovi tribute. And I told him, I said, it's all with love. And, and I've been reaching out to John. I sent John a couple texts about helping him, trying to help him if he needs any help with his voice, and I think I could really do that. I'd reach out to people in his camp, but I guess he's doing okay. I saw him back in 2022. I was at Gwyneth Paltrow's 50th birthday party, and he was there, and we got to catch up and spend a lot of time together. And I told him, man, it was right in 2022. It was right after he had that tour that was really rough, and he had vocal surgery. And because I had vocal surgery about 15 years ago as well. And I told him, I said, dude, if you need any help, if you need anything, I'm always here for you. And he goes, thank you, man. But that's it. And I'm pulling for him, man. I hope he does well over the summer with his shows. I'm really praying for him. And again, he's been such a big supporter and and just such a great inspiration as always for me and a lot of other rock and rollers. So let's go, Johnny. Get it together, bro.
Yeah. You're gonna play something more than the first 5 or 6 records. I mean, the hard rock, the heavier stuff. You wanna play? Are you gonna play the 90s and the 2000s stuff or no?
Yeah. We have a mix. I'm not giving the set list away, but we have a mix of everything, and I think there's going to be something for everybody. Look, man, I have a 23 song set put together with it, and it covers everything. I will say I'm not doing anything from the latest 2 or 3 records. There's no point in that. Yeah. There's too many other great songs. But the stuff we're doing and the deep cuts, I think, are the ones that are going to speak volumes, and those are the ones that the real Bon Jovi fans they're gonna go nuts over. And there are songs that have deep meaning to me because I'm connected to some of the co-writers and people who were involved.
For example, "Burning for Love." That's my favorite track, man.
Oh man, great song. I'm burning for love.
Yeah. Right. By the way, today is an anniversary of that record. It's 42 years since the record came out on this day.
Yeah, and I've been lucky enough. One of my dear friends, one of my best friends, is Chuck Berge, who Chuck is from Billy Joel's band, and he was in Rainbow and Blue Oyster Cult and all these other things. Meatloaf. Chuck lives about 8 miles away from me, and Chuck played on half of the first Bon Jovi record. I think that's Chuck on "Burning for Love," but he's on "She Don't Know Me," "Shot Through the Heart," a couple other ones.
Oh, awesome! Awesome, and I can't wait to hear that project, that band. And
look, I got the mic stand.
Wow, original.
Yeah.
So, tell me a little bit about the history. You started saying some stuff about Def Leppard. How did you get that gig? I mean, you're like an emergency call. You still are, right? For Def Leppard.
Yeah, and other bands as well, other people as well, other artists. But I met Phil and the Def Leppard guys back on the Hysteria tour back in 1987, 88. And we became Phil and I became great friends. I've always said Phil is like my British older brother, and now all the guys in the band, that's what I call them, my British brothers, if you will. And when Vivian got diagnosed with cancer in 2013, it was an easy call, because Phil has been such a supporter, like John Bon Jovi, of my music, and he was always pushing, and trying to help. Him and Joe were big fans of PJ and I. We had a band in the early 2000s called 40 Foot Ringo, which is a real power pop thing. It was like Cheap Trick on steroids, if you will. And we were supposed to go out on tour with Def Leppard, but it just never worked out financially. We couldn't afford to do it. But when Viv got diagnosed, it was an easy call because I'd been around them so much, and we were like family, if you will. And Phil was the one who basically said, I got the guy, Steve, and he sings great, he plays great, he looks great. He was so perfect. And then a year later, September 2014, I'm at Wembley Stadium in the UK playing my first gig with Def Leppard, in front of 90,000 people.
Amazing. Did you tour with them I mean, how many gigs did you play with them?
I played over the last 10 years. I played like 16 shows, some private stuff and the public stuff. And, and I filled in for both of them. I'd done, most of my shows were filling in for Vivian, but I did 3 shows in 2018 on the Journey Def Leppard tour, filling in for Phil, which was, in 24 hours notice, I went up and, saved the day to help my friends out, and most importantly, help Phil and his wife, Helen, in a crisis situation. And, I'm always there for them, and they know that. But, one of the most incredible things, and like Def Leppard, and like Bon Jovi, it's always great when you get to fill in for a band that their music is some of your favorite. I've told people all the time, Kiss, Van Halen, Bon Jovi, Def Leppard, I don't even have to learn those songs. I know them. It's part of my being. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's in my blood. It's in my DNA. Yeah. So, but there's, playing with those guys, there was nothing like it. I remember the first real gig that we did with that one that I did with Def Leppard. I remember, like, at the end of the show, Photograph is the last song, and I remember looking over to my left and going, holy shit, I'm fucking playing Photograph with Def Leppard. It wasn't like, because I played in tribute bands and played in cover bands and played Photograph, but this was like looking over and seeing, Sav, Joe Elliott, and Phil rocking out, and then look back and seeing Rick Allen, and I was just like, holy shit, this is fucking unbelievable.
It hit you right there, right?
It did, man, and it never, ever, ever got lost on me. I was never nervous because, those guys, I've been friends with them, and I know their show so well. But it was one of those moments where you just, your blood just goes, your heart rate goes up a little bit more. And I was like, yeah, this is it, man.
Wow, man. What's your favorite record of Def Leppard?
I mean, personally, it's Hysteria for a number of reasons, just because of the production. I still use it in my studio when I'm referencing other songs. Like if I'm mixing a song, I'll put on one of the songs of Hysteria and go, all right, I'm in the ballpark. I know if I get close to that, I'm doing good. But Hysteria. But High and Dry is extra special because there's something about that record that, at the time when that came out, it was just, I just wore the hell out of it. I still have the vinyl. But I love them all, I really do. Rock Brigade was the first song that I ever heard from Def Leppard when that came out. And that is still one of my favorite songs. And what's funny about that, every time I played with Leppard, I would always go up to Joe and Sav. I'd go up to Joe and say, Joe, can we just play Rock Brigade tonight, please, just for me? And he'd go, sorry, mate, regretfully, no, we can't do it. And I'm like, oh, I just want to play Rock Brigade once.
Yeah, I like their, I love everything they did, but I love their harder stuff, the earlier stuff more. Yeah. Like High and Dry or like Pyromania also.
Oh, yeah. Pyromania. That's a groundbreaking. I love it all. But I would say Hysteria, Pyromania, High and Dry, and then the first album. And I do love a lot of Adrenalize. Mike Shipley, who became their main engineer producer, was a friend of mine as well. He mixed some of the Trixter stuff. And, the history is so deep with those guys. And again, my life has been just sort of a rock and roll fantasy, if you will. Yeah. The experiences I've had, whether it's, my 30 plus year friendship with Eddie Van Halen, and I'm still very good friends with Alex Van Halen, and my relationship with the Kiss guys, all of them. And most importantly, over the last couple of years, working and becoming, so tight with Ace. And the Def Leppard and the Bon Jovis, it's like, wow, man, this kid from Paramus, New Jersey. I always go, man, what would the 8-year-old Steve Brown say right now? You know, like when I was playing Photograph with Def Leppard, like, you gotta be fucking kidding me.
Yeah. I'm sorry for your loss for Ace Frehley, man. God bless him. God bless him. Rest in peace. He was one of the best. And how was working with him, and how did that whole combination of you two became? About his last album.
Well, I'd known Ace for, a long time. I met Ace. Coincidentally, I met Ace for the first time backstage at Skid Row Bon Jovi on the New Jersey tour at the Meadowlands Arena when Ace came out. I don't know if you remember, Ace came out and they did Cold Gin that night with Skid Row. And Snake introduced me to him in the dressing room, and it was quintessential Ace. Snake brought me over. Hey, Ace, this is my friend Steve. He's in the band Trixter, and Ace just goes, "Hey, Steve, how you doing? Great to meet you. I'm Ace." And it was like I I know who you are, man. You're one of my heroes. But over in 2022, I believe it was when Ace started doing his first set of shows again after COVID, when everybody was starting to get back out there. Or it might have even been, I don't know what year it was, but whatever. We had just released Tokyo Motor Fist Lions, and that was getting a big buzz around the industry. And so Tokyo Motor Fist got invited to open up for Ace at a couple East Coast shows. And a bunch of the guys in his camp, and John Astronomy, his manager, and Phil Dealey, who used to work for Trixter back in the day, they were like, "Man, we got to get you hooked up with Ace. You got to work, man." They love that Tokyo Motor Fist record. They're like, "Ace, you and Ace would be a great combination." So, and then his fiance at the time, Laura Cove, who's a dear friend of mine, and PJ and I, we grew up with her. She's a Jersey girl. She grew up a couple towns away from us. She was the one who said, "Send me the ideas and I'll get them to Ace, and let's just keep doing this." So I just came in my studio, and as the biggest Kiss fan and Ace fan, I was like, what would I want him to do now? Like, what kind of songs would I want him to write? And what would I want to hear as a fan? Most importantly, that's what we like to do, is be able to hear those songs that, make our blood boil. And so I came down here, and the first thing I, worked on was the idea what became Walking on the Moon. And I sent him a couple ideas, which were Walking on the Moon, Fighting for Life, Cherry Medicine. I think I had some Constantly Cute, a couple other things. And I sent him these rough, finished things. They were kind of, Walking on the Moon had a lot of what's on the record, and I sent it to him, and about 3 months later, I kid you not, dude, I'm getting out of the shower, I'm dripping wet, and my phone rings, and I see it, and it says Paul Frehley, and I'm like, holy shit, he's finally calling. And I pick up the phone, he goes, "Hey, Steve, what's up? It's Ace." He goes, "I listened to these ideas." He goes, "This stuff's great." And he goes, and then immediately he starts going into, and Walking on the Moon wasn't called Walking on the Moon, it was something else. And he was like, "Yeah, we're going to change the title. I got the hook. It's called Walking on the Moon. That's going to be the title of the record, blah, blah, blah." And he talks for like 5 minutes, and I'm just sitting there going, this is awesome. And, it was really cool because we hadn't even gotten together, but already there was a common connection. And I could tell he was so excited. And then he goes, "When can you come over?" Because Ace is living in Jersey. I'm in New Jersey. He lives about 45 minutes away from me. So about 5 days later, I went to his house, and we finished writing the lyrics and the melodies for Walking on the Moon. And actually, that first day, we did 90% of the vocals that are on there. And then later that night, after the first time we worked together, later that night, he went down in the studio. He was so excited he couldn't sleep that he went down to the studio and he wrote the bridge and recorded it himself. And then what I had to do was cut it up and move it into where it is now. And basically, that first week we had that song done. And then I did a mix of Walking on the Moon. I sent it to the record label, Monarch Heavy in New York City. and they flipped out. Everybody flipped out. We were sending it to all of our confidants and consigliaries, the lawyers, the managers, the agents, and everybody was like, we want that. That's the new record. And we were off to the races. And the next song we cut was Fighting for Life, which has become definitely one of the fan favorites from the 10,000 Volts record. And it was just incredible. It was an incredible time, and we became so close and had so much fun making the record. He would come here and work. We would do like one day at his house, one day here. And here, let me show you. Here's a bunch of some of his handwritten lyrics.
Wow, man.
He would the first day he came here, I didn't have any of these legal pads. And he goes, Steve, you got to go to Staples, which is the, stationery store. You got to go to Staples and get some pads. So I went out and got a bunch. So, it's just incredible, man. I mean, I still have a hard time believing that he's gone. His spirit's here. Luckily he graciously gave me a couple guitars. When we finished the record, he gave me his Les Paul that we used that he would keep here. And he said, I want you to have this because, I know we're going to be making a lot more music, and I love you. And it was just really, really incredible. And, we had a lot more music left to make. And I have a bunch of ideas that were going to be on the next record. He was working on Origins 3 with his old engineer producer Alex Saltzman, and then we were going to continue working on what was going to be the follow-up for 10,000 Volts, but sadly that's not to be. So God bless you, Ace. We miss you.
God bless. Do you maybe have some leftovers of those records that can be released as new songs? Maybe he recorded with you something else besides that, like demos or something?
Yeah, I mean, we have some rough stuff, stuff that wasn't finished. Right after 10,000 Volts was released, we were going to do a deluxe version that was going to have some alternate mixes, we have different drummers that played on songs multiple times, so there's different versions of songs. So I have a feeling someday that'll get taken care of. The estate, Monique and Jeanette, Ace's daughter and his wife, they have to, the estate has to take care of it. It's all in legal stuff. It's not up to me and it's not up to the record label. But I believe, that at someday in the next couple of years, all the stuff that we have will release. I have a live record that we recorded in 2024, the summer of 2024, a multi-camera video shoot, from that show that hopefully that gets to see the light of day. So there is stuff, and I'm hoping that all the lawyers play nice in the sandbox and we're able to get everything released properly, because Ace deserves it.
That would be awesome. That would be great for all the fans like myself. What's your Kiss connection? Well, we were talking about Ace. You're like fan of Kiss, but you worked with all those guys, or just a friend?
Well, yeah, just friends. I mean, we toured with Kiss on the Revenge tour, but we'd known, I'd met Gene and Paul, many times before that, and they knew about the band. Gene in particular, he was a fan of Trixter. Yeah. I think there was maybe some interest from Simmons Records at one point, but I remember when we were out at making the first Trixter record in 1989, we were out in LA and we were at the MTV Music Awards, the infamous the one when Axl Rose and Vince Neil got into a little scuffle backstage, and what else happened that night? Andrew Dice Clay came out and said a bunch of things, but we were there, and Gene came up to us. He was with Chuck Wright. I'll never forget it. And Gene knew more about us than we knew about it. He was like, "Oh, Trixter, Mechanic MCA Records. You guys are the hot new band. Everybody's talking about you." And he gave us, all advice, typical Gene Simmons stuff. But, and we would see them, we would always go backstage when they were playing, locally, and Eric Carr was always so great, and Bruce, And then, we toured with them, and a dream come true is when Trixter got the call to open for Kiss on the Revenge tour. I mean, that was, Kiss was the reason that I started playing music. And, those guys were huge influences on me. And so to finally get that phone call that we're going to go out on tour, it was monumental. And, and then on the tour, we had so much fun with them. And, Paul would show me his new guitars that got built. And I remember Gene would always come in our dressing room because we had a lot of junk food, like candy and sweets, and he loves all that shit. So he would come and he'd bring his son, Nick. Nick was probably 3 or 4 years old at the time. And he'd go, Nick, come on, we're going to go to Trixter's dressing room. They have candy bars, because Paul was like a health fanatic. So he wouldn't have any junk food in the dressing room, but we had it all. And been friends for a long time with Eric Singer, and then what happened was when Kiss reunited, the original Kiss on the Revenge tour, on the reunion tour in '96, a couple of guys who worked for Trixter went on to go work for Kiss. And Brian Hartley, who was our lighting guy, became Kiss's lighting guy on the reunion tour, and he's like TSO's guy now. And so the good news is that, and we were friends with Doc McGee, so we were, backstage passes and, free tickets. I probably saw on that reunion tour, I probably saw Kiss like 20 times, and I don't think I ever bought a ticket. Maybe once I bought one ticket. So it was beautiful, beautiful times.
Yeah. I'm very glad that you hit big while you were still young. I mean, you were like teenager when you signed the deal, right?
Yeah, I was 18.
And fascinating is that you are like, you're still young now, but you lived through the 80s as a young guy, but also played the clubs, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We started Trixter, the first Trixter show was in July of 1984.
And you started like 83?
Yep, I started the band in '83. We were originally called Raid, R-A-D-E, but that was only one show that we did. And then the first official Trixter show was July 8th, 1984. So if you can believe it, man, we're heading into the 42nd year of Trixter Mania.
Wow, man. And you hit it big. You had hits, MTV and stuff. How did you survive the 90s? I gotta ask you that. About the 90s for the glam and for the hard rock scene of the 80s. The heavy metal scene, the 90s were like the worst. How did you survive that?
Well, you learn that you learn to appreciate your success, because as quick as you get it, it can be gone, and that's what happened to us. Thank God. And I say this. As much of a bummer as it was that our career got kind of cut short and our success as we were going up because of grunge, still to this day, the 80s hard rock from 1980 to, let's say, even 1990, which was really 91, but 10 years, I don't think there's been any genre of music that has lasted as long. If you go from 1980 to 1989, there were hard rock bands selling millions of records year in and year out. I don't know of any other genre that has that. So that just goes to show you how important the 80s were, but most importantly, the 80s hard rock. For bands that were there, it was the greatest time in the world. Yeah. And, but for us, it was one of those things, man. We were just so grateful to be a part of it. We didn't really know what was happening. All of a sudden, there was this band Nirvana, and it was like, wow, they're wearing flannel shirts too, and Pearl Jam. Wow, they're trying to look like Trixter, which was kind of funny. And then lo and behold, it was kind of like all of a sudden MTV was like, we don't want anything to do with any band that was, from the 80s hard rock, the hair band thing. And they cut our heads off, literally. And, So PJ and I just made a decision. We survived the 90s we looked at each other and said, hey man, we're musicians. We're not getting day jobs. So we started a new band. We started this band called Throwing Rocks, which was, kind of a cross between, let's say, Oasis, the Black Crowes. Oasis is one of my favorite bands of that time. And so I wanted to start a band like that. And we did that. And then we also started a cover band, to make money here in the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, playing cover tunes, playing bars 4 or 5 nights a week. Yep. We had this great band called Sugar Belly. And, that's always the one thing that people don't understand is, they have a lot of people don't know that, when you're an artist, even when you're successful, you're the last one that ever gets paid. It's the record company, the managers, the lawyers, everybody else gets paid, and then the artist gets paid. People think just because you're on MTV and you're out on tour that you're a millionaire. That's so not the case. So, you learn that we have to survive. And look, getting back to why I still have over the last 15 years played in cover bands, played in tribute bands, why I have multiple bands, because for me to keep a roof over my head as a professional musician and support my family and put food on the table, I have to do multiple things. And that's what PJ and I learned. The other guys decided to get day jobs and careers, and they kind of moved away, and that's cool too, whatever you got to do. But, it was very much, I learned this from the Van Halen brothers, Ed and Al taught me, you're either a musician or you're not. And there's a big difference, because it's easy to be a rock star when you're successful and you're on MTV and you're traveling in tour buses and Learjets and limousines. It's really tough when you're on your own, you're driving in a van across the country with 4 guys, 5 guys with your gear, and you're looking at each other and you go, I don't want to do this anymore. It's easy when you're, again, when there's girls and you're playing sold out arenas. But, I was always kind of like, man, I just love music and I love to play and I love to make music, whether I'm on #1 on MTV or I'm on the cover of Circus magazine. That never mattered to me. And, and Ed and Al Van Halen taught me, and they always said, if we weren't successful, we'd still probably be playing in a wedding band with our dad, or we'd still be playing cover tunes, because they're real musicians.
Yes,
and that's what real musicians do. No matter what, you play, you play and you make music.
Yes, and I have a sense that because I lived through the 90s, I'm an 80s kid, but in the 90s I got to listen to all sorts of music, heavy metal, hard rock, punk and stuff. I got into the underground, and I remember, and I also play since 2000 drums. So I got to see that after 2005-ish, the glam metal hard rock began to come back, like reunion stuff, reunion tours. Also people started to like that music again, It was like a reformation or something.
It was, I remember that. I remember like Poison going back out on tour in the early 2000s, and they had the couple good package tours, and it took a couple years. And you got to give credit where credit's due. The Def Leppard guys never stopped. Yeah. They kept going all through the 90s, all through the 2000s. Even Bon Jovi, but Bon Jovi was one of those bands that transcended. When they had that big hit with "It's My Life," they went to another level, and they crossed over, and they became relevant again. But
but we gotta say that Def Leppard and Bon Jovi changed the style a little bit to be more, successful in those times,
Of course, and they did it.
Like also Metallica changed the style,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so. Yeah, and it's a great thing. And again, now more than ever, the 80s hard rock and Trixter, we've been out on tour for the last couple of years. We did, 55 shows last year. We did 60 the year before, and we're playing as a three-piece now. We don't have our old singer and the drummer. They don't do it anymore. And PJ and I have been out. I'm the new lead singer of Trixter and the lead guitar player. PJ singing some songs, and we got a great new drummer, Ben Hands, who sings great, and he's doing some harmonies. So, it is what it is. But we're out there bringing the spirit of what we call the spirit of 1989 to everybody.
I think it's not going out anymore. I mean, everybody loves the 80s now, wanted to ask you about one thing about that very famous tour you did with in the early 90s with Warrant. That's like that's like a myth now. It was amazing because you all of you played together also. On the show. How was that tour? It
was one of the greatest times of our lives. It was. We had toured with, before that, we had toured with Stryper, Don Dokken, Poison, and the Scorpions, of course. That was our, at the height of it with us when we were we were number one. That was our first major arena tour around, North America. But the Scorpions were so much older than us. Those guys were 20 years older than us. So we hung out with them and they were awesome and we partied with them. But when we got on tour with Warrant and Firehouse, they were like our brothers. We all became best friends, party animals together. And it was just fucking nuts. And the best of times. Like, we had so much fun. And literally, it was like a traveling three-ring circus party that never ended for 5 months.
I love that you at the end you played the Beastie Boys song.
Yes,
that's amazing. I mean, compiling those styles together, it sounds great.
Yep, it was. And that was I think that was like Janie's idea. Because the first couple shows we were doing Tush by ZZ Top. And then somebody said, why don't we do Fight for Your Right to Party? And that was the anthem of the tour because it was so much. And you never saw that. Very rarely would you see three whole bands jamming together. And it was, as soon as we got off stage, it was party time. The Warrant guys, man, they taught us how to really drink and indulge, if you will.
Man, thank you for this amazing podcast interview. Just one more thing before we end it. What are you working on next besides Always Jovi? Some new record or producing some stuff?
Yeah, well, right now, like I told you before, I'm finishing up the Lorraine Lewis Femme Fatale album that is coming out on Cleopatra Records. We're a little more than halfway done, and it's been so great working with Lorraine. She's got, her and I have the same energy. We just love everything that we're doing musically, and and also we're going over to Australia together. Trixter, Stevie Rochelle from Tough, and Lorraine Lewis, and we're going to be doing our first Australia shows together at the third week of March. And that's a first. I've never been to Australia. PJ's been there a couple times, but we're so looking forward to that. And still finishing. We have a Trixter, a Steve and PJ, not a Trixter documentary, but a documentary that we're working on. And the new Trixter album is about 75% done. It's probably not going to come out till next year because I want the documentary and the record to come out at the same time to be like a companion thing. But I'm telling you, man, people are going to be blown away when they hear the music. I might release one of the new songs this year just because I'm so excited and I want people to hear what we're doing. But we'll see.
Thank you. You're very busy, and thank you for this interview. We've been talking about it for a long time. Thank you, man.
You bet, man. All the best. See you soon.
See you, man. Bye-bye. Thank you.